Hello and welcome back, my lycra-clad compadres, to the M2M cycling podcast on your mic. Today I have the pleasure of being joined by Tim, who I've never actually ridden with, but I look forward to having a conversation about all things cycling. Tim, how are you doing, and do you know what you're in for?
I'm doing really well, and it's probably a good thing that we haven't ridden together. You probably wouldn't be doing this podcast with me.
I'm delighted to say that I've been looking for my long lost brother, so it's fantastic that we found one another.
I know. I thought it was a different podcast.
Long lost families or something.
Yeah.
Great.
There we go.
Great. Well, look, thank you for your time today. Great to have you. Anyone on the podcast who's happy to talk about their cycling exploits. What made you get into this whole cycling malarkey in the first place?
I think two things, really. One, I was quite a keen runner, and my knees decided to slowly disintegrate underneath me, as for most runners it does, and also just keeping the weight off. I think, in terms of fitness and trying to keep yourself skinny, it helps. But I think more importantly for me is just how it interacts with my mental health. So that is the most important thing for me. So yeah.
That's very interesting, and if you're comfortable doing so, we can maybe talk about that in a bit more depth.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the big things that spurred the creation of m2M cycling, I guess, and people who follow the podcast or read the blog will probably be bored of me banging on about this, but I started cycling for similar reasons. Sat on the sofa, dangling kebab meat into my gob, looked down at my man breasts and thought, this isn't helping the anxiety. I need to do something about it. So got on the saddle. Are you happy to share kind of your story around the mental health and the physical health and the connection there?
Yeah. So very similar. I think I looked down at, it might have been a pizza rather than kebab meat. There was definitely a beer next to it. There still is a beer next to it, to be fair.
Always a beer.
Always a beer. But I struggled with my mental health for many years. Clinically depressed, and also suffer from anxiety. The Anxiety Club, great one to be in. And yeah, so struggled with that and not really being able to understand why it happened to me. But the thing that I found is that the kind of mindfulness of cycling, it's very hard, isn't it, when you're trying your best to be the best cyclist you can be, to think about much else. And I just found that very cathartic to have that coping mechanism, to be able to do, cycle up a huge col or something like that. Not that I started off like that. I started off a huge col for me was, probably Brill Hill in Oxfordshire. Felt like, Von2, hauling my fat ass up there. And I think the thing, and I only realised this recently as well, is that actually being a member of a club, so I'm a member of a local cycling club, and just the ability to cycle with like-minded people from various backgrounds and talk about really trivial stuff is incredibly good for your well-being. You're not being judged. You're just guys on a bike going for a ride. And no, previously I've always done the man ride, which is done by Black Sheep Clothing. And that is literally to encourage guys to get on a bike and chat about stuff. Doesn't need to be deep and meaningful. Nice if it is, but just get on a bike and chat. So yeah, that's how I sort of accidentally stumbled on it and realized it was making me better, and so on and so forth.
Fantastic. And Tim, thank you for sharing that and being so open and honest. I think the more guys that are, especially in today's climate, and we're not the first people to be talking about mental health. We sure as hell won't be the last. But as long as we're adding to the volume of guys that are, that's great. So thanks for sharing. If you were going back and giving yourself some advice, or for any of the beginners and the newbies that are listening, what's kind of some of the best advice you could give them for enjoying it and from kind of the off?
Don't have to spend a fortune on a bike. Don't get sort of worried about how good your bike is. Get on a bike. That's the most important thing. Talk to lots of people. Go to your local bike shop. Get some advice from them. Invest in the frame. Don't invest in the drivetrain. And buy some nice wheels when you can afford it. And join a club. Join a club, whether it's not an online club, or whether that's even better if it's your local bike club. There are literally thousands of them. And just I've learned so much from some of the guys who I ride with, and they're incredible characters. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Are there any it's interesting hearing you talk about the frame. We've written about the fact my first bike was a aluminium Specialized. It must have cost about £800 at the time, but I got it through the UK Cycle to Work scheme. For those that don't know, it's where you kind of pay by your gross salary, so you save the tax and you pay monthly, so you hardly notice it's going. And I was stupid, I was looking at all these bikes with 2 chain rings, the big cogs at the front, and I thought, 2 chain rings, I'm going to go for 3, because obviously, who wouldn't want 3? And you live and learn.
I've got this feeling for Audax riding.
So yes, I agree. You don't just spend thousands of pounds on your first bike. Would you recommend kind of a price bracket, and what are the components? I know you mentioned the frame. Are there any other components you would suggest are worth investing in on that first bike to make sure you enjoy your riding more?
Frame and wheels, probably the thing that make a difference. You can stick stuff on a frame and upgrade it, but if you've got a poor frame, you end up upgrading the whole of the bike, I suppose, is the thing that I learned. So if you've got a half decent frame, you can start off with a 105 Shimano or something like that, and then you can, well, it's not exactly convertible, but you can work your way up the drivetrain, and that's a more cost efficient way of sort of staging the money out that you want to spend on your bike. But frame, wheels with good hubs, and you don't have to spend, you don't have to get yourself some NVSES or some zips or something like that. Don't go and spend £5,000 on wheels and £4,000 on wheels.
I'd just like to cancel that order, please. Cancel the zips. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
I'd say when you go to get your next, when you want to make that step up, however much that is. So say you're spending £600, £700 on your first bike, and you want to make that big step up to £1.5 grand, £2,000, get a bike fit. That's worth an investment. Yeah.
Are there any brands that you would recommend where the frame is decent enough, where the frame's shelf life will last a decent amount of upgrades?
I would say, get yourself a good Trek second-hand frame. It's not a bad idea. Trek, good manufacturer, even though they're the mass production part of it still. They're good. My first bike was a Trek. It was the old Madone aluminium. Doesn't look like the one now, let me tell you. So yeah, I think value for money Trek are pretty good. They're pretty good. there's nothing wrong with getting, if you join a bike club and always, like I say, talk to people and they'll be able to advise you, And often when you join a bike club, that upgrade bike you want is one that somebody else in the club is trying to sell. So, that's another good tip. But yeah, but Specialized is a great go-to frame, I think, for a beginner.
Yeah. What's some of the worst advice you've heard, which you would suggest that others ignore completely?
There's some. So if you just riding over geared, so you're pushing like really, really hard, like you're climbing the side of Everest to try and sort of create some strength. You can't do that outdoors. It's just crazy. I've done it. I've done it for a whole A ride in my club. I rode, sort of over geared, and it was horrendous. So yeah, I think that's probably one thing that I really wouldn't suggest that you do. It's not going to be warm going down the side of a alpine col, so really do pack a little jacket in the back. I learned that one. Yes. That was a good one.
It's amazing how cold sweat becomes.
It is. It's because you've been doing a lot of it before you get up there, right? So
yeah.
And the newspaper trick, it's not as good as you think,
Newspaper trick.
Yeah, so in the old days, they used to, on the descents, there'd be people handing out newspapers and they'd shove newspaper down the front of their jerseys to give them some form of protection.
Really?
So yeah, that's a real thing.
I haven't heard of the newspaper trick. What did flash up on my social media once was the old tinfoil around the toes trick to keep them warm. Have you seen that one?
Yes, I have. Yeah. How was that for you?
Bullshit. Do you remember that time when it clicked for you and how long it took?
Yeah. Yeah, when I was stonking out those 12-mile rides at the start and falling to pieces at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it literally was like that. Like I thought a 12-mile run, 12-mile cycle was like to the end of the earth. And I think the thing that clicks is just pacing. Firstly, like you're not sprinting this, just take your time and enjoy what's around you. I think you sort of forget, you're so involved in the act of riding a bike and what that means, that you forget that this is a really pleasurable thing. You don't have to be like your lungs popping out your mouth to be a great cyclist. Actually, it's the opposite, isn't it? It's all about restraint, being a good distance cyclist. So yeah, I think that's the thing. And I know I keep banging on about it, but just finding somebody to do it with. So I wasn't straight away in a club, but I bumped into a guy watching my son play tennis. He had just bought a bike, and we used to go out and do 12 miles together, and watch these people come by, and, big club pelotons, and think, wow, how can they go so fast for so long? And yeah, so you don't beat yourself up about it. Like, just take your time, don't beat yourself up, enjoy it.
What are the things, or what is the one thing you would suggest? Look, if you can save the money, go out and get it. It's going to improve. You're going to enjoy your cycling so much more.
So, good shoes, good helmet. So that your feet are the contact point to your steed. So, invest as much as you can spend inordinate amounts of money on shoes. Of course, you can spend 400 quid easily on a pair of shoes, but it's worth investing in that because they're the contact point. So shoes, definitely good shoes. Helmet saves your life, so don't skimp on a helmet. Make sure it fits properly, that sort of stuff. What else is a good thing? Oh, just doesn't have to spend a fortune, but a rain cape makes life a lot better, doesn't it?
A rain cape,
or even a gilet, or a gilet. It's really good. If you've got a good sort of waterproof long sleeved vest and a gilet, you can ride through most of the weather that you'd want to ride through. It's only when you probably get to a bit crazy like you and I that you go out in weather and you're like, that's not fun. But yeah, they're good
it's a
things.
Strange one. I won't go outside if it's raining, but I find it quite exhilarating if it starts raining when I'm out. For me, it just becomes a man versus Mother Nature then, and there's something quite, I don't know what it is, I can't think of the word, but it's primitive, is that the word? Where it's like, come on, throw your best at me. Moving on to nutrition and hydration. Any lessons that you've learned and ways to avoid people making the same mistakes that you may have made in your earlier experiences on the bike?
Biggest lesson I learned is make sure you do it. And do it more than you think you need to do it.
Yes.
That is the number one thing you must remember. So that constant rhythm of hydration, and eating before you feel that you need to eat. So not being reactive to being hungry. So bit by bit, keep it going. Nutrition wise, it's important to get something I think that you like. I use SIS because they're quite hydrated, so they're not super sweet. I don't like these really sweet gels. And for sort of on bike food, if you like, I think Veloforte are doing really good stuff. It tastes like food, so I'm a big fan of Veloforte. Liquids, if it's a long ride, one bottle of water and then one bottle of SIS hydration as well. I don't tend to put glucose of any type in my drinks unless it's a really long ride. So the nutrition for me starts with solid stuff. So that's where I'm having my Veloforte cakes, and I'm still in pretty good nick and enjoying eating it, and have some manual dexterity, all that kind of stuff. And then just as you become more and more fatigued, you want to get it in with the least effort. So then you might move to gels. So caffeine if I'm doing a really big ride, so like the Marmotte or something like that, I'd put some have some caffeine towards the end of the ride just to push me on.
And for context, and to make it really practical for anyone watching who's kind of aiming to do their first 30 or 40 miler, and I know everybody's different and requires different volumes and quantities, but for a 40 miler, what would you pack in your back pocket or your bottles, and how would you space it out?
So what I would do with a 40 miler is that's probably just a bar and a half or something like that. Or a really good tip is to get a Ziploc bag, get your nutritional bar or whatever it is, and cut it into bits, so you can just dip in. It can be open, but it gives you some protection, and just dip in and just nibble, and it's already cut up for you. So that's a really good thing. And so it'd be about a bar and a half. For 40 miles, I probably wouldn't use anything else than that really.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd say if you were doing your first 40 miler, you know, so 20 in, 20, have a cafe stop. I think they are the lifeblood of cycling. Actually, I cycle to eat cake and espresso. It's just, cycling is just a byproduct of my love of cake.
Yeah, it's just even for the social aspect, as you say, kind of bringing the conversation slightly full circle for that conversation. Yeah, when you're starting a ride, everyone's got energy, you can breathe, you're having a talk. Then it starts to get serious when people start running out of breath and no one talks because everyone's just concentrating and blowing out their arse. And then you end on the coffee stop and you sit down and you have a chat and, you know,
stick one in halfway. Yeah, stick one in halfway. You know, go. You know, and know you can then push yourself that little bit further, can't you? Because that stop can be as much as you want. And build up to doing a really long run. You know, if you want to do that more consistent, I'm not going to stop. So if you've got a sportif in mind that you want to do, and you're not really looking to stop if you can on a sportif, you know, you want to carry on and have that sort of slightly pro feeling, then, you know, just do it gradually and learn to eat. I mean, it sounds so ridiculous, isn't it? But forgetting to drink and forgetting to eat have got to be the things that people who are new to the sport just don't get that thing that you need to do. It seems so weird, doesn't it?
And you only need to bonk once for you to never forget to eat or drink again. If you could go back and tell your younger cycling self just one lesson or one thing that you wish you knew then that you know now, that would help you have enjoyed it faster, safer, quicker, what would you go back and tell your younger self that maybe the watchers and listeners of this podcast could benefit from?
Eating less burgers is cheaper than buying a very light bike. Is probably one that I would go for. Yeah. It's a diminishing return, isn't it? Spending that money. And also I would say, I don't know if there's much that I would change, to be fair. I was really lucky in the fact that I joined a great club. And I'm just, you can tell I'm an advocate of the cycling club. And I was lucky to stumble on it. So yeah.
I have thought of one other thing, actually. It goes back to what we said off camera when we're just making introductions. I know that you're a very senior professional within the hospitality industry. And that's people I speak to say, oh, you know, similar successfully ambitious career success individual. I haven't got the time. But here I am talking to a COO of a very successful, well-known hospitality brand or family of brands. How do you find the time? Where do you squeeze it in?
It's a really good question. So the answer to that is, you can always tell my car because it's got a bike in the boot. So I live down south, but I work around Manchester and Yorkshire, and so I'm lucky enough to be able to get up a bit earlier. You know, 5:30, 6 o'clock. Just go for an hour ride. Find I'll book in a hotel at the bottom of the Cat and Fiddle in Macclesfield, and I'll go right up the Cat and Fiddle. You know, there's the fact of the matter is that getting out of bed early helps, and it sets you up so much more for the day. It's an investment. The way I view it, it's an investment. I guess that's a really way. It's not about finding the time. It's about finding the mindset. So is it a task, or is it something that's an important part of your day? So looking after yourself makes you a great leader. And that's how I rationalize it to myself. And I can tell the difference. I can tell the difference if I slack off and don't ride much. I feel that difference. So yeah, it's not about finding the time, it's about rationalizing why you're doing it.
That is a fascinating point. And we touch on it on the blog and the book, especially when it comes to mental health, about the power of endorphins, however you pronounce it. And the internal dialogue that I have, you're lying in bed, it's cold, like now, especially the first frost we had in South Hertfordshire, and it's the first morning frost of the year.
Yeah.
And you think, oh man. And I didn't go out today. And then this afternoon, I was going to go on the turbo trainer before Mrs. P very kindly brought me a post-work vodka just to chill out after the end of the day's work. I thought, I should have gone on the trainer. So tomorrow, I'm on it. And when you do, it's that. And often the very best rides I have is when you do drag yourself out. And it doesn't have, as you say, it doesn't have to be long. It's 15-miler, 18-miler. At our level, that's usually about an hour or so. If you're averaging 18 miles, depending on the elevation. And you get back, and you're in the shower, and those are the best rides. That's where you're buzzing, and as you say, you're set up for the day. And I notice the difference. Some days it's just a drudgery, and you go out, you're buzzing, right? You come out that, mixed with your first coffee of the day, because I do it fasted in the morning.
So do I.
Lunchtime.
So do I.
Up until lunchtime, you're absolutely buzzing. Everything's positive, and you get that can-do attitude. It's fascinating. Yeah, it's great, and that's a great note to end it on in terms of bringing it full circle back to the mental health. So thank you for that. Yeah. That's brilliant. Well, look, everybody, thank you very much for tuning in to the On Your Mic podcast again. Tim, thank you for sharing your experiences, your lessons. Hopefully someone else out there watching will benefit and learn from it, so they can enjoy their.
If they can pick it out of the rambling rubbish, then they're welcome to any advice that I've managed to impart.
Yeah, thank you. And if you want any more, feel free to sign up to the blog, the forum, follow us on social at m2mcycling.com. It's all over there. And until next time, ride safe and see you soon. Thank you.